The stars had never looked so cold. Commander Park stood alone on the bridge of the starship Eternal Dawn. His hands gripped the metal railing so hard that his knuckles turned white. Through the massive viewing window, he watched his home planet burn. Earth was dying. Orange and red flames covered the blue and green world that had been home to 12 billion human beings. Cities that had stood for thousands of years turned to ash in minutes. The oceans boiled. The mountains crumbled. Everything humanity had ever built was being erased. The Dominion had come without warning. 3 weeks ago, their massive fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system. 10,000 warships, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. They did not send messages. They did not make demands. They simply attacked. Earth's defenses were strong. Humans had spent 200 years preparing for alien threats. They had orbital stations with powerful weapons. They had shield generators that could protect entire continents. They had the best soldiers and the generals. None of it mattered. The cut through human defenses like a hot knife through butter. Their weapons were beyond anything humanity had ever seen. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. In 3 days, they destroyed everything that humans had built in space. In 3 more days, they broke through the planetary shields. Now, on the 7th day, Earth was burning. Doctor rushed onto the bridge. She was a small woman with tired eyes and messy hair. She had not slept in 4 days. In her shaking hands, she held a data pad with the latest reports from the surface. "Commander," she said, her voice cracking. "Sol Command has gone silent. The last message." They activated Protocol Omega. Closed his eyes. Protocol Omega. The words felt like ice in his chest. It was humanity's final plan, created 50 years ago when humans first learned they were not alone in the universe. When they learned that the galaxy was full of ancient empires that saw younger species as nothing more than insects to be crushed. "How many ships escaped?" asked quietly. 47 carriers made it out. We have approximately 2 million survivors." Paused, and tears rolled down her cheeks. "That is all that remains of our species, Commander. 2 million out of 12 billion. Lieutenant Lee looked up from his station. He was young, barely 25 years old. 3 weeks ago, he had been planning his wedding. His future wife had been in Tokyo when they attacked. She was gone now, along with everyone else he had ever loved. "Sir," said, his voice empty of emotion, "they are broadcasting on all communication channels. They are celebrating. They are calling us the easiest conquest in their history." Turned to face the young lieutenant. He saw the pain in the boy's eyes, the same pain that burned in his own heart. But he also saw something else, something harder, something dangerous. "Let them celebrate," said. "Let them think they have won." The bridge crew looked at their commander with confusion. How could he speak of anything but defeat? Their planet was gone. Their people were dead. They were running away with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the ships that carried them. But knew something that did not. They had studied humanity for years before attacking. They had analyzed human technology and found it primitive. They had examined human biology and found it weak. They had calculated human military strength and found it laughable. But they had not studied human history. If they had, they would have learned about the time when a small island nation defeated one of the largest empires on Earth. They would have learned about resistance fighters who refused to surrender even when their countries were occupied for years. They would have learned about humans who survived impossible disasters through sheer stubbornness. They had conquered 1,000 species across 50,000 years. Every single one of those species had followed the same pattern. When faced with overwhelming force, they surrendered. They accepted their fate. They became slaves or they died. Humans were different. "Navigation," ordered, his voice growing stronger. "Set course for the nebula, maximum speed." The navigation officer, a woman named Shin, looked up in surprise. "Sir, The nebula is extremely dangerous. The radiation levels would kill most species within days. Most species, yes, replied, but not humans. Our ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, and nuclear disasters. Our bodies are built to endure what other species cannot. They will not follow us there. He turned to address the entire bridge crew. I know you are all in pain. I know you have lost everything. Your families, your friends, your home. I have lost them too. My wife was in Beijing. My daughter was studying in London. They are gone and nothing will bring them back. His voice cracked, but he forced himself to continue. They believe they have destroyed humanity. They believe we are finished. They are wrong. As long as even one human being remains alive, humanity survives. And as long as humanity survives, we have a chance. Doctor stepped forward. Commander, Protocol Omega was designed for exactly this situation. It contains plans, technologies, strategies that we have been developing in secret for decades. Things they do not know about. Things nobody knows about. Nodded. They made a mistake today. They killed our people, but they did not kill our spirit. They destroyed our home, but they did not destroy our hope. And they created something they should have feared more than any weapon. What is that, sir? Asked. Looked out at the stars, at the distant light of 1,000,000 suns. They gave 2,000,000 humans a reason to live. Revenge. The eternal dawn's engines roared to life. Across space, 46 other ships did the same. The last survivors of humanity turned away from their burning world and flew toward the darkness between the stars. Behind them, the fleet continued its celebration. Their soldiers laughed and drank and boasted about the easy victory. Their commanders sent reports to the, claiming credit for the conquest. Their historians began writing the story of humanity's extinction. They did not notice the small fleet disappearing into the void. They did not care about the handful of survivors escaping their grasp. What could 2,000,000 refugees do against an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years? They would find out. In the cold darkness of space, Commander Park made a promise to the ghosts of 12 billion people. He promised that their deaths would not be meaningless. He promised that they would pay for what they had done. He promised that one day humanity would return. And when that day came, the galaxy would learn why humans had once called themselves the most dangerous species on their planet. Part 5. The Ultimate Weapon Document, the tale of humanity's ultimate weapon. Part 5. The Ultimate Weapon. Prime was the heart of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. For 50,000 years, this world had ruled over 3,000 star systems. Its cities I've completed all 5 parts of the tale of humanity's ultimate weapon in separate documents. Here's a summary of what each part contains. Part 1. The Fall of Earth, 1200 words. The devastating attack on Earth and humanity's desperate escape with only 2,000,000 survivors. Commander Park leads the remaining humans into hiding while promising revenge. Part 2. The Forgotten Doctrine, 1200 words. 3 years later in exile, Admiral and Professor Han reveal Protocol Omega to the survivors. They explain that humanity's ultimate weapon isn't technology. It's spite, stubbornness, and the refusal to accept defeat. Part 3. The Ghost War, 1200 words. Human infiltration teams wage psychological warfare across space. Sergeant leads silent sabotage missions, while agents spread hope among the enslaved species. The Empire begins to crack from within. Part 4. The Revelation, 1200 words. Ambassador Shin addresses the Galactic Assembly, revealing humanity's survival and achievements. The human fleet arrives, and slave rebellions erupt across space. Part 5. The Ultimate Weapon, 1200 words. Commander Park confronts Supreme Overlord alone. The true weapon is revealed, not spite or revenge, but hope. The story ends 100 years later with a transformed galaxy and a child learning about forgiveness. All parts are written in third person with simple English as requested. Would you like me to make any changes to any of the parts as AI and can make mistakes? Please double-check responses. Opus 4.5 is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Copy-publish the tale of humanity's ultimate weapon. Part 2, The Forgotten Doctrine. 3 years had passed since Earth burned. Deep inside the nebula, where deadly radiation killed any ship that dared to enter, the human fleet had found a new home. They had built stations inside hollowed-out asteroids. They had created farms using artificial light. They had turned despair into determination. Admiral stood in the command center of the flagship Vengeance Born. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Before the attack, she had been a simple fleet commander. Now she was the highest-ranking military officer left in humanity. On the screens around her, she watched the progress of their secret project. Factories working day and night. Scientists pushing the limits of human knowledge. Soldiers training harder than any soldiers in history. Captain Sora entered the room and saluted. She was younger than the Admiral, with a scar running across her left cheek, a reminder of the day she lost her entire family. "Admiral, the Council is asking questions again," Sora reported. "They want to know what we are building. They want to know when we will strike back." Side, the Council was made up of representatives from the survivor groups. Some of them wanted immediate revenge. They wanted to attack the right now, even though it would mean certain death. Others wanted peace. They believed humanity should hide forever or try to negotiate with their enemies. Both groups were wrong. "Tell the Council that they will learn everything tonight," said. "Professor Han is ready to explain Protocol Omega." Sora hesitated. "Admiral, I have seen some of the projects we are working on, the stealth ships, the infiltration teams, the psychological warfare programs." She paused. "And the prototype, that ship covered in names." "What about it?" "It frightens me, Admiral. What we are building is not just a weapon. It is something else entirely." Smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "That is exactly what it needs to be, Captain. They have every weapon imaginable. They have ships and soldiers and technology we cannot match, so we must fight them with something they have never faced before." "And what is that?" "Human nature." That evening, every surviving human gathered in the great hall of the main station. 2 million people watched through screens and speakers as Professor Han walked to the center stage. Han was an old man now, past 80 years old. His body was weak, but his mind was still sharp. Before the attack, he had been Earth's greatest historian. He had spent his life studying how humans faced impossible situations, how they survived when everything said they should die. Protocol Omega had been his creation. "Thank you all for coming," Han began, his voice amplified throughout the fleet. "I know many of you have questions. You want to know what our plan is. You want to know how we will defeat an enemy that has conquered 1,000 worlds. You want to know what humanity's ultimate weapon is." He paused and looked at the faces around him. Young and old, strong and weak, all of them carrying the same weight of loss and grief. "Let me tell you a story first. Thousands of years ago on old Earth, there was a small country called Korea. It was surrounded by much larger and more powerful neighbors. Again and again, these neighbors invaded. Again and again, the Korean people were conquered, occupied, and oppressed. The crowd listened in silence. But they never surrendered, not truly. They kept their language, their culture, their identity. They waited, they planned, they endured, and eventually they became strong again. This pattern repeated throughout human history. Small groups defeating large empires, weak people overcoming strong enemies, the impossible becoming possible. He activated a holographic display showing human history, not the clean version taught in schools, but the real version. Wars that lasted generations, plagues that killed billions, disasters that should have ended everything. They believe they understand us. They studied our technology and found it primitive. They studied our biology and found it weak. They studied our military and found it small, so they concluded that we were easy prey. His voice grew stronger. They were fools. They measured the wrong things. Human strength is not in our bodies or our machines. Human strength is in our minds, in our hearts, in our absolute refusal to accept defeat. Admiral stepped forward to stand beside the professor. Protocol Omega is not a battle plan, she announced. It is not a fleet strategy or a super weapon. It is the unleashing of humanity's oldest and most powerful instinct. She looked directly into the main camera, knowing that every human in the fleet was watching. On Earth, we were the weakest species. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. Every other predator was faster and stronger than us. We should have gone extinct millions of years ago. Instead, we conquered the planet. Do you know why? The silence was absolute. Because we never gave up. Because we learned to use our minds instead of our bodies. Because when something knocked us down, we got back up. And because we discovered an emotion that no other species has ever truly understood. She paused. Spite. The word hung in the air like a weapon. They expect us to surrender or die. That is what every other species has done. They cannot imagine any other response, but we are not every other species. We are human, and we will make them regret the day they ever heard our name. Professor Han nodded slowly. Protocol Omega is the activation of everything that makes us human. Our creativity, our stubbornness, our ability to turn disaster into opportunity, our willingness to sacrifice everything for future generations, and yes, our capacity for vengeance. He turned off the historical display and brought up new images. Sleek black ships designed to be invisible, soldiers training in techniques that no had ever encountered, scientists building devices that broke the rules of warfare. We will not fight them with armies. We will fight them with ideas. We will not attack their fleets. We will attack their minds. We will not try to conquer their empire. We will make their empire destroy itself. Admiral raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. Tomorrow we begin the next phase. Our spies have already infiltrated space. Our agents are already in position. To think they destroyed us 3 years ago. They are about to learn that you cannot kill an idea. You cannot burn a spirit. You cannot defeat a species that refuses to be defeated. She looked out at the crowd of survivors. 2 million people who had lost everything. 2 million people who had every reason to give up. 2 million people who were about to become the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The wanted war said quietly, "We will give them something worse. We will give them fear. We will give them doubt. We will give them nightmares." In the crowd, Commander Park stood with his crew. Dr. Lieutenant Lee, Navigator Shin. They had all changed in 3 years. The grief was still there, but it had hardened into something stronger, something sharper. They were ready. Humanity's ultimate weapon is not a bomb or a fleet, Professor Han concluded. It is the simple truth that we never stop fighting. We never stop hopping. We never stop believing that tomorrow can be better than today. He smiled for the first time in 3 years. They have made the greatest mistake in their long history. They thought they killed us. Instead, they made us angry. Supply Station floated in the darkness of space like a metal mountain. It was one of thousands that kept the great empire running. Every day, ships arrived with food, weapons, and fuel. Every day, those supplies were sent to military bases across 100 star systems. Tonight, it had visitors. Sergeant moved through the shadows like a ghost. Her team of 12 soldiers followed behind her, each one trained in the ancient human art of silent warfare. They wore special suits that blocked all heat and sound. They carried weapons that left no trace. They had been inside the station for 6 hours, and no one had noticed them. Private, the youngest member of the team, crouched beside a massive computer terminal. "Sergeant, I have access to the main systems. Should I plant the virus?" Shook her head. "Not yet. First, we change their supply records, make it look like they have twice as much food as they actually have." Frowned in confusion. "Why? Would it not be better to make them think they have less?" "Think about it. If they believe they have less, they will order more supplies. If they believe they have more, they will not order anything. In 3 months, when the real supplies run out, they will not understand what happened. They will blame each other. They will fight among themselves." His eyes widened as she understood. This was not a military attack. This was something much more subtle, something much more dangerous. Across space, similar operations were happening every night. Human teams slipped into bases and stations without being detected, but they did not plant bombs. They did not kill soldiers. They did not destroy equipment. Instead, they changed things, small things. A decimal point moved in a financial record, a communication delayed by a few hours, a maintenance schedule altered so that machines would fail at the worst possible time. Commander O monitored all of these operations from a hidden base deep in friendly space. His screens showed a map of the Empire, covered with thousands of small dots. Each dot represented a successful mission. "They still do not know we exist," he reported to Admiral through a secure channel. "They are blaming the problems on bad luck, incompetent workers, and outdated equipment." "Good," replied. "What about the psychological operations?" Smiled. "Even better. Our agents have been spreading rumors among the slave populations, stories about a mysterious force that fights against the. Some of the slaves have started calling us the ghosts." The empire was built on slavery. They had conquered hundreds of species and forced them to work in mines, factories, and farms. These slaves had no hope of freedom. They had been broken by generations of cruelty. But hope is a strange thing. Even the smallest spark can start a fire. Human agents whispered to the slaves in the dark. They told them about Earth, a planet that had dared to resist. They told them about the human survivors who refused to die. They told them that change was coming. The slaves began to believe. The Supreme Overlord sat on his throne and listened to reports from his generals. He was ancient, over 3,000 years old, kept alive by technology that younger species could not understand. He had personally commanded the destruction of Earth. He had laughed as that blue world burned. He was not laughing now. "Explain this to me again," growled. "How did we lose 15 supply stations in 1 month?" His generals looked at each other nervously. None of them wanted to be the one to admit the truth. "Great Overlord," one finally said, "we have investigated thoroughly. There is no evidence of enemy action. The failures appear to be accidents and equipment malfunctions." 15 accidents in 1 month, in stations spread across 3 sectors. Claws dug into his throne. "Do you take me for a fool?" "No, Great Overlord. But our sensors detected no ships. Our cameras saw no intruders. Our security systems recorded nothing unusual." Stood up, and every general in the room took a step back. Even after 3,000 years, they feared his anger. "The humans," he said slowly, "could any of them have survived?" "Impossible, Great Overlord. We destroyed their planet. We tracked their escape ships into the nebula. Nothing can survive in that radiation." "Nothing can survive," repeated, "and yet things keep happening that cannot be explained." That night, for the first time in centuries, ordered extra guards posted outside his chambers. The Ghost War continued for 2 years. Human teams struck again and again, never leaving evidence, never being seen. The Empire began to crack. Communication between planets became unreliable. No one could trust the information they received. Generals accused each other of sabotage. Politicians blamed military leaders for the failures. Military leaders blamed politicians for not providing enough resources. And among the slaves, something remarkable was happening. They stopped being afraid. On a mining planet called, a slave named stood before a group of his fellow workers. He was a member of the species, a people who had been conquered by the 500 years ago. "I heard another story today," said quietly, "about the ghosts. They say the ghosts freed a group of slaves on Station 7. They say the ghosts left a message carved into the wall." "What did it say?" another slave asked. Smiled, something his species had almost forgotten how to do. It said, "Your chains are only as strong as your belief in them." The slaves did not rebel that night. They were not ready yet, but they began to talk to each other. They began to plan. They began to hope. Back at the human fleet, doctors studied the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Every success, every failure, every small change that brought them closer to their goal. Lieutenant Lee sat beside her, his face pale from exhaustion. He had been working 18 hours a day for 2 years. "Is it working?" he asked. "Sometimes I wonder if any of this matters. We are so small and they are so large." Put her hand on his shoulder. "Do you know how humans killed mammoths? Massive creatures, 10 times our size, with tusks that could destroy us with one blow." He shook his head. "We did not attack them directly. We followed them. We waited. We made small cuts that slowly weakened them. We drove them toward cliffs. We exhausted them. And when they finally fell, it was not because of any single wound. It was because of 1,000 tiny injuries." She pointed at the map of space. "That is what we are doing. Every sabotaged supply line is a cut. Every rumor we spread is a cut. Every seed of doubt we plant is a cut. They are still standing, but they are bleeding from 1,000 wounds." Commander Park entered the room, holding a report. "We just received word from our agents on Prime," he said. "Overlord has begun executing his own generals. He believes there are traitors in his command." And exchanged looks. "There are no traitors," said slowly. "It is just us. We made him think there are traitors." Nodded. "They have never faced an enemy like us. They have never fought anyone who uses their own minds against them. They are used to destroying fleets and conquering worlds. They do not know how to fight shadows." He looked out the window at the stars beyond. "But the time for shadows is almost over. Soon, we will step into the light. And when we do, they will finally learn the truth." "What truth is that?" asked. His eyes were hard as stone. "That they did not destroy humanity 5 years ago. They just made us stronger." Galactic Assembly Hall was the largest structure ever built. It floated in neutral space, far from any empire's territory, and served as a meeting place for all the known species in the galaxy. Over 100 different races sent representatives here to discuss trade, treaties, and the future of civilization. Today, they had gathered to witness something unprecedented. Ambassador Shin walked through the massive doors alone. 5 years ago, she had been a junior diplomat on Earth, handling minor trade agreements. Now she carried the weight of her entire species on her shoulders. The assembly hall was designed to intimidate. Its ceiling stretched so high that it disappeared into darkness. Its seats rose in endless rows filled with beings of every shape and size. Some had scales, some had fur, some were made of pure energy. All of them watched with curiosity, contempt, or indifference. To most of them, humanity was already dead, a minor species that had existed for a brief moment and then been erased, barely worth remembering. Walked to the central platform and stood beneath a spotlight that seemed designed to make speakers feel small. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "Representatives of the Galactic Assembly, I bring you greetings from the human species." A murmur ran through the crowd. Several representatives laughed openly. The ambassador, a massive creature covered in dark armor, rose from his seat. "This is a joke. The humans were exterminated 5 years ago. I was there when their planet burned. Smiled. You were there when our planet burned, yes, but planets are not species. Buildings are not people. You destroyed our home. You did not destroy us. She pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared above her head. It showed a map of territory, covered with red warning symbols. In the past 5 years, the Dominion has experienced the following: 47% increase in equipment failures, 32% decrease in slave productivity, 112 internal conflicts between military commanders, 14 major slave rebellions, and the complete collapse of their financial system in 7 sectors. The assembly fell silent. Even those who did not care about humanity understood the significance of these numbers. The Dominion was the most powerful empire in the galaxy. It had ruled for 50,000 years. It did not have problems like this. The ambassador's face twisted with rage. Lies, human lies. They are not lies, replied calmly. They are facts, and here is another fact. Humanity did all of this. With 2 million survivors and 47 ships, we have brought your mighty empire to its knees. Now she had everyone's attention. They believed they understood us. They analyzed our technology and our biology and our military strength. They concluded that we were weak. They were measuring the wrong things. She changed the display to show images of human history. Ancient warriors fighting against impossible odds. Scientists solving unsolvable problems. Ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of courage. Human strength is not in our bodies or our machines. It is in our minds. It is in our refusal to accept defeat. It is in our ability to adapt, to learn, to change, to find solutions where others see only problems. The ambassador was trembling with fury. You are nothing, a handful of refugees hiding in space. Your species is extinct. We are standing in front of you right now, said simply. We do not look very extinct to me. At that moment, alarms began to ring throughout the assembly hall. Representatives checked their communication devices and began shouting in a dozen different languages. The human fleet had arrived. Not 47 ships, 400. Ships that had been built in secret over 5 years. Ships crewed by humans who had lost everything and rebuilt themselves from nothing. Commander Park stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, looking at the massive assembly station. Beside him, Doctor monitored the sensors. All ships in position, she reported. The defense fleet is scrambling, but they seem confused. Their coordination is terrible. Nodded. We spent 5 years making sure their coordination would be terrible. Their officers do not trust each other. Their communication systems are compromised. Their soldiers are demoralized. He could see the lead ship of the human fleet moving into position. It was called the Unyielding Hope, and it was covered from bow to stern in tiny writing. Names, 12 billion names etched into the hull in letters so small they could barely be seen. Every human who had died when Earth burned. Every child who never grew up. Every elder who never saw there. Every dream that was never fulfilled. The Unyielding Hope was a memorial and a weapon at the same time. It reminded everyone who saw it that humanity would never forget what had been taken from them. Back in the assembly hall, continued her speech as chaos erupted around her. We did not come here to ask for help. We did not come here to beg for mercy. We came here to deliver a message to every species in this galaxy. She turned to face the ambassador directly. The Dominion has ruled through fear for 50,000 years. They have conquered countless worlds. They have enslaved hundreds of species. They believed they could never be challenged. Her voice rose. They were wrong. Humanity challenges them, not with ships or weapons or technology. We challenge them with an idea. The idea that tyranny does not last forever. The idea that even the smallest voice can be heard. The idea that hope is more powerful than fear. The ambassador drew his weapon, a blade of pure energy. I will kill you myself, human. Before he could move, a voice echoed through every speaker in the assembly hall. It was Professor Han, broadcasting from the fleet above. To all the slaves of the Dominion, we bring you a message. For 5 years, we have been whispering in your ears. We have been telling you stories of freedom. We have been planting seeds of hope in your hearts. Today, those seeds bloom. Across space, on 1,000 different worlds, slaves stopped working. They put down their tools. They looked at their masters. And for the first time in generations, they saw not all-powerful rulers, but frightened creatures facing something they did not understand. The rebellions began everywhere at once. Not violent rebellions. The humans had taught the slaves something different. They simply stopped cooperating. They stopped following orders. They sat down and refused to move. The war machine ground to a halt. In the assembly hall, the ambassador lowered his weapon. His communication device was screaming with reports of chaos throughout the empire. Supply lines collapsing, factories shutting down, soldiers refusing to fight. Stepped closer to him. You thought you destroyed us 5 years ago. Instead, you united us. You gave 2 million humans a single purpose. And while you celebrated your victory, we spent every single day planning your defeat. She smiled, and there was no mercy in it. Your empire is falling apart as we speak, not because of our weapons, because of our words, our ideas, our hope. You cannot fight an idea with swords. You cannot kill hope with fire. Admiral's voice came through's earpiece. Ambassador, the defense fleet is withdrawing. They have received orders to return to the... It seems they have bigger problems to deal with. Nodded and addressed the assembly one final time. We are not here to ask for your alliance. We are here to show you what is possible. They have held this galaxy in fear for 50,000 years. Today, that fear ends. Not because of us, because of every species that ever dreamed of freedom. She turned and walked out of the assembly hall, leaving chaos in her wake. On the bridge of the eternal dawn, watched her shuttle return to the fleet. Around him, his crew was cheering. After 5 years of hiding and planning and waiting, they had finally stepped into the light. But knew the war was not over yet. The Dominion was wounded, but it was not dead. Supreme Overlord was still alive, and a wounded empire was a dangerous empire. Set course for Prime, he ordered quietly. It is time to finish this. Prime was the heart of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. For 50,000 years, this world had ruled over 3,000 star systems. Its cities stretched across continents, built on the bones of conquered species. Its monuments celebrated victory after victory after victory. Today, those monuments burned. The human fleet had not attacked with weapons. They had attacked with truth. Every screen on the planet showed the real history of the Dominion, not the glorious stories of conquest, but the ugly reality of genocide, slavery, and cruelty. Every speaker broadcast the voices of species that had been silenced for. The people had never seen themselves clearly before. Now they could not look away. Lieutenant Lee led the ground assault team through the ruined streets of the capital city. His soldiers did not carry guns. They carried projectors that displayed images on every surface. They carried speakers that told stories in every language. Target ahead, reported Sergeant. The grand monument of, the one celebrating the destruction of the Myra species. The Myra had been peaceful beings, musicians and artists who had never harmed anyone. They had destroyed them completely, erasing even the memory of their existence from the galaxy. Until now. Activated his projector, and suddenly the monument was covered with images of Myra artwork. Beautiful paintings, graceful sculptures, the faces of a species that had been dead for 10,000 years. Let them be remembered, said quietly. All across the planet, similar scenes were happening. Human teams found the monuments celebrating conquest and transformed them into memorials for the conquered. They did not tear down the statues. They covered them with the truth. The people watched in shock. For their entire lives, they had been told that their empire was glorious, that the species they conquered had been savage and dangerous, that they brought order to a chaotic galaxy. Now they saw the children of those species, the families, the lovers, the friends. They saw that the savages had been poets and teachers and healers. They saw that their empire was built on a mountain of innocent blood. Some of the people wept. Some grew angry, but they did not know who to be angry at. The humans, their own leaders, themselves. In the imperial palace, Supreme Overlord stood alone. His guards had abandoned him. His generals had fled. His empire was crumbling around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The doors opened, and a single human walked in. Commander Park. He carried no weapon. He wore no armor. He simply walked through the carnage of fallen guards and stood before the most powerful being in the galaxy. "You," growled, "you are the leader of the humans." "I am one of them," replied. "Humans do not have supreme overlords. We tried that system a few times in our history. It never worked out well." His claws flexed. Even at his age, he could kill a human with one strike. His body was enhanced by technology that made him stronger than a dozen soldiers. "I could kill you right now," he said. "Yes," agreed. "But it would not change anything. Kill me and another human will take my place. Kill all of us and the idea we represent will live on. You cannot kill an idea, you can only prove that you fear it." Stared at the human for a long moment. For 3,000 years, he had looked at other species and seen only weakness, only prey, only things to be conquered and consumed. Now, for the first time, he saw something else. He saw himself reflected in his eyes, and he did not like what he saw. "Why?" asked, his voice suddenly tired. "You have won. Your enemy is defeated. Your people are avenged. Why did you not simply destroy us? Why show us our crimes instead of burning our world as we burned yours?" Looked around the throne room, at the golden walls built with slave labor, at the jeweled ceiling that celebrated genocide, at all the symbols of an empire built on suffering. "Because destruction is easy," he said. "Any species can destroy. They have been destroying for 50,000 years. It accomplished nothing. After each conquest, you needed another. After each victory, you needed a bigger enemy to fight. Your empire is sick. It has been sick since the beginning." He stepped closer. "Humanity could have become like you. We have that capacity within us. The same rage, the same hunger for power, the same willingness to hurt others. We spent most of our history fighting each other, destroying each other, making the same mistakes you made." "Then what makes you different?" demanded. Smiled sadly. "We learned, slowly, painfully, with many failures along the way. We learned that revenge does not heal wounds. We learned that conquest does not bring peace. We learned that the only victory worth having is one that makes the future better for everyone." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a flower, a Korean rose grown from seeds that had been preserved since Earth's last days. "This flower is extinct now, except for a few plants we keep in our ships. It survived the destruction of our world because someone thought it was worth saving. Not because it was powerful or useful, but because it was beautiful." He placed the flower on his throne. "Humanity's ultimate weapon is not spite. It is not revenge. It is not even our stubbornness or our creativity. Our ultimate weapon is hope. The belief that tomorrow can be better than today. The faith that even the worst enemy can become a friend." Looked at the flower, then at the human standing before him. "And if I do not want to be your friend, if I want to keep fighting until every last human is dead?" "Then you will lose," said simply. "Not because we will kill you, but because your own people will abandon you. They have seen the truth now. They know what their empire really is. Some of them will choose to keep living the old way, but many will not. Change is coming to your species. You can lead that change, or you can be crushed by it." The old overlord sat heavily on his throne. For 3,000 years, he had ruled through fear and strength. He had never considered any other way. "What would you have me do?" he asked. "Surrender," replied. "Not to us, to your own conscience. Admit what your empire has done. Free the slaves, make peace with the species you have wronged, and spend whatever years you have left trying to repair the damage." "And if I refuse?" Shrugged, "Then we leave and you face your people alone. They have been watching this conversation, all of them. We are broadcasting it across the planet." His eyes widened. He looked around and saw the small camera drones floating in the corners of the room. Every on the planet had heard his words, his weakness, his doubt. For a long moment he was silent. Then slowly he lowered his head. "I surrender." 100 years later, the galaxy had changed. The Dominion was gone. In its place was the Galactic Alliance, a cooperative union of hundreds of species working together. There was still conflict. There was still injustice. Perfection remained impossible. But it was better, so much better. At the center of the alliance floated the Memorial Garden, built in the exact coordinates where Earth had once orbited. Every species that they had destroyed had a section. Every culture, every art form, every language was preserved and celebrated. Doctor, now very old, sat in the garden's central pavilion. Around her, children of 100 different species played together. Among them were young, the of those who had once conquered the galaxy. A young girl approached her nervously. "Grandmother," she said, using the title the children had given her, "is it true that humans forgave us after everything we did?" Smiled and took the child's clawed hand. "Forgiveness is not forgetting, little one. We remember everything, but we chose to believe that what you become matters more than what you were." She pointed to a Korean rose bush growing nearby. "That flower once grew only on Earth. Now it grows on 1,000 worlds because we share it with anyone who asks. That is what humans learned after all our years of war and suffering. The things that matter most become more precious when they are shared." The child looked at the flowers, then back at the old human woman. "I want to be good," she whispered. "I want to make up for what my ancestors did." Pulled her into a hug. "Then you already have, my dear, you already have." Above the garden, ships from across the galaxy came and went. Traders and travelers and tourists, all united by the simple miracle of cooperation. Among them flew the unyielding Hope, still carrying 12 billion names on its hull, still reminding everyone of what had been lost. But now those names meant something different. They were not just a memorial to the dead. They were a promise to the living, a promise that their sacrifice had not been in vain. Humanity had discovered its ultimate weapon, not a bomb or a fleet or an army. Hope, the stubborn, irrational, magnificent belief that tomorrow could be better than today. And across the galaxy, species that had once dismissed humans as weak and primitive learned the truth. Hope is contagious. It spreads from heart to heart. It cannot be killed. And it changes everything.